Hey guys, this will be video 8 for the Gibson Les Paul restoration. I've got the planks glued in, the maple cap, and it's dried overnight, and I've yet to pull it out of the clamps yet, so I'll do that in just a little while. With this video, I'm going to try to keep it pretty casual and discuss what I had mentioned nearing the end of the last video, where we're at a threshold now to where we can start discussing or considering options. If this is our guitar, what do we want the end results to be? That's the cool thing about a restoration. You have plenty of reference points out there, meaning this guitar could resemble a 54 custom, and you could take it in that direction now that you're doing such a major renovation. You could you could have stripped the body down and turned it into a burst, but wouldn't really have made any sense because of the condition of the maple, obviously, but also because it's a custom. Let's keep it a custom. And again, I will reiterate one more time, this is just general conversation about what you could do with various guitars. This is not for this guitar because, as I've mentioned, the client has a very clear end results in mind, and you don't want to start calling up clients and saying, hey, I had a great idea, why don't we do this? Because you might catch them on a bad day, you might catch them on a good day, and you end up on the road to El Dorado. It's a saying I like to say, where you both end up with an end results, but neither one of you really wanted to be there 100%, and you end up in regret. So I'm going to not really continue talking about what if scenarios like that. But with this guitar, the more I got to thinking about it, because I'm not real big into Gibsons, I had to back up and do a little bit more research, because not that I'm not into Gibsons, I'm just more of a Gretsch guy, because I'm into the rockabilly jazz thing and love the Bigsby, and I think by now you guys probably kind of already know that. But with this guitar right here, with the Keith Williams 5-Watt World video series that I was talking about, he's got one specific video called The Gibson Les Paul: A Short History. Most anyone watching this video series has probably already seen that video, but I'll make note that in 1954 is the first year that Gibson introduced the black custom. And the more I began to realize what I was holding, is like, wow, this is the ripple in the pond from that design. And if you go back to that video, and I'm just going to read some of my notes here. Note the specs and the very first black 2 pickup rather than 3 custom at 8 minutes and 15 seconds into that video is when he really starts highlighting the gold Les Paul Jr. and the custom, which was black, which was introduced in 1954, and he talks about it pretty much in detail until about 9 minutes and 40 seconds. So anyway, I'll just go check out that video, and you'll begin to see why I may mention certain things in the future, because I was moving out of that whole Gretsch Bigsby mindset and into this whole hardtail Les Paul category, making sure that I really stay on point with what it is I'm restoring here. I had mentioned when you get to this point in a renovation, you need to start considering those options, and not just the options that are very personal to us. Meaning, let's say you're really big into, I don't know, like the Floyd Rose, and you love playing the Floyd Rose. What a horrific mistake it would be to route this guitar out and install a Floyd Rose, and I'll just leave it at that. So there are certain things that, and I learned this from Benedetto, where he was mentioning very early on in his series, um, stick to what people are used to seeing if you want to make any money doing this. But as soon as you make the slightest little bit of variation or departure from what we're used to, you enter into a different world and you start introducing things that you may think are incredible, but it's just not well received. So if you're building a guitar to keep, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt you're going to keep that guitar, then that's fine. Knock yourself out. Do whatever it is you want to do. But if you know that in the back of your mind you're doing a renovation and you're considering maybe you'll sell it or maybe you'll upgrade one day, stick to as original as you possibly can, even down to the finish on the hardware. Don't depart from chrome to nickel or nickel to chrome unless you really know it's going to maintain the value. So I think that's kind of cut and dry and that makes sense. Again, that's just very general conversation. I mentioned about the binding, why I had left the binding intact. When you look at this and you go, "It's, oh my God, it's damaged. Get it off of there. Get it out of the way." No, don't overwhelm yourself with folding your socks. Just go run the race, you know. And what I mean by that is a lot of this binding is really beautiful right up to the point where there is no more binding. And a lot of people go, just go and tear it all out and route it and redo the binding. No, we'll cross that bridge later on. We had far more important things to deal with, with all of the maple that was rotted out, and the fact that the body, I can't. Where's the guitar? Yeah, here it is. The body was missing. So, and I don't need to revisit that. We all know, if you're at this point in the series, you've already seen all those videos and you're intrigued by it, or either you think we've lost our minds and doing the project. So leave the binding on, leave the maple on. You remember how one of the first videos I said, at a minimum, I know I'm going to drop this lower plank off. Well, look what happened just within 2 videos, 3 videos. I decided, man, let's just leave it on. It's fine. I'm not, I didn't encroach on the original join here between the center plank and the lower plank. I didn't have to remove any of this binding, and even though this is banged up really bad here on the corner, I'm not going to be arrogant, but I know my abilities with doing binding work. I can fix that. I can join to that damaged area, and you'll barely even know, even if you got a magnifying glass, that I've made that repair. And it allows us to keep all this original stuff in place. Now, alongside my Silverjet that I restored, which was a 1956, I'm going off memory here. I can't remember if it was first or after, but I also had a 1957 Gretsch 6120, a true blue, a cherry red, the cherry red orange one, not the Chet Atkins maple that we all know. And that guitar was amazing in that everything was beautiful in the guitar, but the neck had been broken so bad that it had ripped it out of the body. And the side of the body, I was able to leave all of the binding on the guitar, but join the binding and only add about, it was broken right here in that guitar. And I was able to add just a 4 to 5 inch length binding, blend it in on a kerf, do a little bit of spray work with the nitro and the tint, and it was incredible. Most people would look at that and go, "Oh, you got to replace all the binding." No, you don't. Leave it alone. Just fix what needs to be fixed. Otherwise leave the rest of it alone. All right, so that's enough rambling about that. So that's why the binding is still on it. And also, and I know I've written this down, but I'm just going to read off what I'd mentioned. Work around all things original until those decisions have to be made. If you don't have to make them, then don't let them overwhelm you. Because, and here's my reasoning. Because what happens if you took this project and you went in and you just said, that top's dead, doom, you got the top. That binding's bad, you got the binding. Well, guess what you're sitting there looking at? You're looking at a project that is probably so ugly and so overwhelming. Odds of you finishing that project, probably 95% chance you're going to end up selling it. And you're going to lose money because you got overwhelmed and you did one of two things. You got so overwhelmed that you lose interest in the project, or worse, you lose confidence in your own abilities to finish it. And because you've basically, you've gutted all the motivational part, even though it was ugly. What I could see, what was left as I was working on all this nasty major repair down here, it was very motivational to me to look up and see I still got a Les Paul. It's 80%, but I've still got a Les Paul. I've still got it was motivational, and it was kind of like the cheerleader that kept me in the game, is what I'm saying. But if I'd have gutted all that stuff off, I would have lost vision. And I've been doing this type stuff for probably 35 years, if not close to 40 years. And you have to have vision, but you also have to make sure that you stay motivated and focused on what it is you're doing, because there's a ton of hours in pulling something like this off and bringing it back to life. So anyway, I think I'm pretty clear on that. And then what I'm going to do after this, I'm going to go ahead and pull these clamps, but then I'm going to talk about the difference between new construction and the whole order of operations if you're doing a new project like the replica that I've got going over there versus a restoration. And I'll echo back to what I said earlier. When you're doing a restoration, at least you've got history, and you've got you've got a game plan that you can follow, because all you got to do is just go on YouTube and go, okay, what does a 1954 black custom look like? What are the specs? What color is the hardware? Is it nickel? Is it chrome? Is it gold? And then I got to, when I was on the Keith Williams video, I realized, holy cow, they had gold hardware. That's bizarre. I didn't know that. In 1954, the Gibson Les Paul Custom had gold hardware. Did not know that. So you guys probably knew that, and you're thinking, wow, everybody knows that. But because I'm not a Gibson, what's the word, aficionado, I didn't know that. So that's what I meant by, that's one of those options that at this threshold that we would have to consider is, well, do we put gold hardware on this thing? Even though maybe I hate gold hardware, or maybe the next guy does like gold hardware. Well, depends on whether you're going to keep it or not. You're going to sell it. If you're going to sell it and try to make money and possibly ship this thing to the UK or Japan or Australia or Russia, what as Benedetto said, what is the industry standard? And on that note, I'd say go gold and have it reliced. I don't care if you had to spend $200 on having it reliced, because after you finish this project, man, you're going to have a guitar that most, and I'm not talking about fakes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 69 Chevelles. I'm talking about 67 Cobras. I'm talking about, Pontiac Trans Ams. What is, what's the difference between a Chevelle and a Trans Am or a Cuda? Well, it boils right down to like 2 or 3 different colors, basically, and 2 or 3 different paint schemes. You wanna lose $10,000? Paint your Chevelle purple and blue, or whatever. Don't do those things. Even though you might not like gold, go gold, because you're gonna sell this thing to try to make money off of it. Not this guitar. This is Rick's guitar. So anyway, bear with me a minute. I'm gonna take these clamps. I don't typically do this, but I'm just going to throw them on the floor and get them off the table. Okay, what do we got? Again, this is the first time I've pulled it out of the clamps, first time I've seen it. One thing I will say for certain before I forget, the tap tone is not going to be there yet because that epoxy takes about 72 hours to really cure to trustable strength, but probably a good 5 to 10 days before it really gets hard. So I might have a little bit of a tap tone, you know, right now, but probably not. This is the first time I've tapped on it. Let me back up. Lift that up a little bit, so if anything, maybe it'll echo a little bit. That's incredible. That right there, I'm not kidding, sounds like my 56 Gretsch Silverjet sounded. The age of the mahogany, I'm not going to start talking about that stuff. See how it's pretty dead? It's because that epoxy's still curing. It's only, I think it's only like 14, 18 hours. Yeah, it's been about 18 hours since that was. Yeah. So no tap tone yet. This is beginning to get a little bit of tap tone. But that's not what this video is about. This is going to reveal. Let me get my light. What this is the I build custom cases as well, and I'll have to look over the camera. This is the back side. This is the front. This is the faux leather that I put on my cases, and then I do like a wildcat leopard interior. They're really crazy. Looks like something Brian Setzer would have. But the scrap material is incredible for putting on the back of a guitar, and then you put a block, and then you clamp, and then you don't run the risk of, you might think, well, just put the clamp directly on the guitar. Well, not if this guitar is in flawless condition, because any indentation in this grain, you'll imprint it into the finish, and you'll run the finish. So that little faux material is really good for clamping. Gravity and glue. I mentioned this probably 5 or 6 videos back, and I kept forgetting to clarify what it was I meant by it. Let's say that I was going to, well, it's easier to show on that guitar right there. When I glued that guitar body up, even though that I knew that I was gonna put it on the orbital sander and sand the body size down to new wood, the worst thing that could happen is I glued everything up with the back down, because the gravity, every bit of the epoxy that squeezed out would have contaminated the mahogany, and it would have been a nightmare to either get the epoxy out or deal with the fact that, great, I just ruined my guitar, because now if I want to stain it, wherever I stain it, it's going to show these tiger stripes from where the epoxy seeped into the wood. So now when you're building it, you have to, you know, put the epoxy on the mahogany and then do all the clamp up from the front. You can see where I had the screws in there holding it together. But as soon as I got it glued up, but before it could squeeze out, I flipped it over. And even as I was building it, I made sure that my clamps, if I was using a C-clamp, I put my C-clamps in where everything was tall on this side, so that when I finally flipped it over, I'd only have to block it up maybe about this much. If you came in with all of your C-clamps or all your clamps sticking up high on this side, when you flipped it over, well, you better have a couple of sawhorses set up so that you can jack it up off the ground 4 feet or 3 feet, so that your cabinet clamps will hang down. Anyway, I think that makes sense. But it's things like that. That's another reason why I like working with the slow dry epoxy, because it gives me about a 15-minute to 30-minute window of true work time, where I literally can go get a cup of coffee in the middle of a glue up if I want. If I'm working with any of the yellow glues, I'm jumping through my ass trying to get that top glued up before something goes wrong. And I have literally nearly lost my cool so many times in the very front end when I first started building, because I hadn't built enough guitars to really be able to stay ahead of the guitar or the project. And before I knew it, man, I lost control. I lost my cool. I got real emotional and basically was so pissed off that I had struggled a lot. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit there, but I guess what I'm saying, that's another reason why I like the epoxy. Gives you time to not panic or freak out and keep your project under control. So gravity and glue. Look where that piece went right there. Imagine if I had not put that tape on there and this was a stained gray guitar. And let's say that I had done all the shaping as I had, and the body was beautiful, it was finished, it was exactly where I wanted it, and then I did the glue up, and then the glue it squeezes out and runs down the side of the body. And then the next day you come in the shop and you realize, oh great, how in the hell are you going to get a black or even just clear epoxy? How would you get that out of the wood? So think ahead of time is what I'm trying to say. And I know I sound like I'm being the angry school teacher, but I'm just trying to save you from major headaches that I've had to deal with in the past. Because once you ruin the wood, especially if I'm talking about if you're doing stained gray guitars or clear finish guitars, you'll be in a world of trouble. So, all right, let's see if we can get a view. I'm sorry, didn't have the. Very nice. I haven't done any additional shaping. I'm trying to. Oh, I'm in the way of my light. Let me see if I can just get up to the light there. I haven't done any additional shaping on the interior there, but that turned out very nice. Now, I will say this. As soon as I glued that top on, the first thing I did was flip this thing over, and I took this little tool here, and there was squeeze out about the size of a caulk bead if you were doing caulking. And then what do? You don't panic. One thing I would recommend, don't try to put tape in here, or don't try to put, in other words, don't clamp this maple together and then try to fit some sort of shield in there that would catch the epoxy. That stuff is going to glue whatever you've got in there so firmly that it'll be a nightmare to get it out. So on that note, what do? It's wet. It's got a slow dry time. You flip it over. Go get a cup of coffee if you want. Come back down. Let me change hands. Take your little scraper tool here. Let me try to get some light on it if I can. And then you simply just squeeze it out. Take your epoxy, come over here on a piece of paper or tape, wipe it off, come back in here, and don't freak out because you're going, oh God, I'm smearing the epoxy up into the maple. Don't worry about it. Keep getting all that out, and wiping on a piece of paper or the piece of paper where you mixed up the epoxy. You'll have a little corner there. And then after you're finished, take some acetone on a clear paper towel, come in here and wash and clean and just wash. Throw the paper towel away and keep washing, keep cleaning all that epoxy off. Why? Because I may want to come in here and stain this. Not with like a, men wax. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean with like a tint my lacquer, or take my tint and mix it with a little bit of alcohol and do like an alcohol wash where it just kind of ages that maple. So keep cleaning, and don't keep reusing the same towel throw that towel away, go to a fresh one, because you want to absorb all of that epoxy. Looks great. Very, very happy with that. And these are the kind of things that when your client receives this, or your client is having his guitar tech do the all the wiring, they start seeing how serious the project is, and then they are compelled to do incredibly nice work as well. And I learned that from being a contractor. If you start with a precision mindset, you end with an incredible job, and you end with with a happy client and no problems getting paid. So anyway, turned out good. So it's turning into a beautiful guitar. It's heavy right now because of all this mass maple. I don't even know what it probably weighs. It probably weighs about 11 or 12 pounds right now. Maybe 10 or 11. It's heavy. It's very heavy. But there is a ton of maple. Oh, I'm sorry. I haven't done this yet, so I don't know if it'll hold. Yeah, it'll stand up. Very cool. So what I'm saying is, once you cut all this maple off, it'll start lightening up. Not sure what else to talk about other than sorry about the camera going crazy, but it's just what it is. I think I'm going to end this video here, because I noticed last night when I hit close to 30 minutes, it takes close to 3 hours to upload a video. So I'm going to end the video right there, and then in the next video I'll talk about the difference between new construction versus restoration, and the mindset you need to be in. And I may even, before I do that video, I probably will go ahead and do some of the carving. Well, I'm sorry, I really didn't talk much about this after we got it out of the... I'll just let you check it out. That's epoxy, and bad. You see that? Hobby Lobby. Typically I would get this from like Woodcraft, but this is a resin black, very, very concentrated. I mean, okay, this is pretty important. I better talk about this. When you mix up your epoxy, your two-part, the most important thing you can do is mix for like a minute to 2 minutes. I mean, just keep mixing, keep mixing, keep mixing, keep mixing. And then I learned this from a professional painter and a boat restorer in South Florida. He really explained the epoxy to me on a molecular level, and he was talking about the importance of letting the epoxy do the, I think it's called thermodynamics, or the thermo side of the epoxy kicking. And when the epoxy starts getting really, really hot, then you know it's really beginning to bond on a molecular level. So the reason I say that is to introduce the fact, mix your epoxy, let it kick, and wait for like 1 or 2 minutes, and then maybe mix it again, then add, I mean, I'm serious when I say this, like a toothpick. Take just a toothpick tip of the black resin. It's amazing how little you need. Then mix the black resin in, or the red, or the yellow, or your tints is what I'm saying. And I've never tried like a trans tint with like an amber. I don't really see the need in doing that. But what I'm saying, don't put your resin on the paper and then your hardener and then the black and try to mix it all at once. You'll probably F up the molecular structure of the epoxy, and you'll kill your bond. And I'm glad I thought of that, because that's pretty... Actually, that's a lot more important than just general conversation. That is critical, because if you mixed all that together too soon, man, you'll be sitting here 5 days from now going, "Why in the hell is the epoxy rubbery? What have I done wrong?" It's because you didn't mix the epoxy on a molecular level. So anyway. And right now, only within 16 to 18 hours, that's already incredibly hard. I mean, it's amazing. So you give that 72 hours, and man, it's gonna be rock solid. The reason I did the black is so that it would blend with the black a little bit and make it a little bit easier to make my transition. I'm already over 30 minutes. It's amazing how quickly that went, but I think we covered some pretty good territory there. And, in the next video, I'll probably have all this carved. At a minimum, I'll have it carved up to a rough point. So can't think of anything else. I appreciate you guys staying in the ring, and it's coming together. It's turning back into a guitar. Thanks, guys.